Dr. Crick stood in the observation chamber of the Galactic Science Council station, her four eyes blinking rapidly as she processed the data streaming across her display. The Velthari scientist had studied over 300 species in her long career, but nothing had prepared her for what she was seeing now. "This cannot be correct," she said, her voice clicking in the way that indicated confusion. "Run the analysis again." Her assistant, a young male named Thav, pressed his manipulator appendages against the console. The results came back the same. A small ship had entered the quarantine zone around the death world known as Sol 3. The inhabitants of that planet, a species that called themselves humans, had somehow survived conditions that should have killed them within days. "The readings are accurate, Dr. Crix," Thav said. "The human vessel has been inside the zone for 47 standard cycles. All life signs remain stable." Crix turned away from the display and walked toward the large window that looked out into space. In the distance, she could see the swirling storms of the Death World's atmosphere. Sol 3, or Earth as the humans called it, was a planet of nightmares. The gravity was crushing. The atmosphere was filled with a corrosive gas that the humans breathed like it was nothing. The surface temperature swung from extreme cold to extreme heat. Radiation from their sun bombarded the planet constantly. And yet humans lived there, not just lived but thrived. The Galactic Science Council had been watching Earth for centuries, waiting for the humans to die out like all logic said they should. Instead, the humans had built cities, created technology, and eventually launched themselves into space. When first contact was made 30 years ago, it had sent shockwaves through the known galaxies. Crix remembered that day well. She had been a junior researcher then, assigned to analyze the biological samples that the contact team had collected. The results had been so strange that her supervisor had accused her of making errors. Humans were impossible. Their bodies were wrong in every way that mattered. They had only 2 eyes, yet they could see a wide range of light wavelengths. They had soft skin with no protective scales or shells, yet that skin could repair itself with remarkable speed. Their bones were dense and heavy, built for a world that tried to pull everything down into its core. Their cardiovascular system pumped a liquid that carried oxygen throughout their bodies, a system that was dangerously inefficient compared to the gill networks of most civilized species. But what truly shocked the scientists was how humans dealt with damage. When a Velthari lost a limb, it was gone forever. The same was true for the Krexan, the Mindari, and every other species in the 12 known galaxies. Humans, however, could regenerate tissue. Cut their skin, and it would knit back together. Break their bones, and new bone would grow to fill the gaps. It was not fast like the legendary regeneration of mythical creatures, but it was real and measurable. Even more disturbing was how humans handled disease. When a pathogen entered a Velthari body, it would either be destroyed by the automated defense cells or it would kill the host. There was no middle ground, but humans had something different. Their immune system would study invaders, learn from them, and remember them. A human who survived a disease became stronger against that disease. They called it immunity, and it went against everything the Council understood about biology. The door to the observation chamber opened, and High Commissioner Zent walked in. He was an elder Krexan, his shell marked with the patterns of 500 years of service to the Council. His presence here meant that this was serious. "Dr. Crix," Zent said, "I need a full report on what is happening in the quarantine zone." Crix bowed her head in respect. "Of course, High Commissioner. A human cargo vessel entered the zone approximately 47 cycles ago. They claim their navigation system malfunctioned. We have been monitoring them since they entered." "And they are still alive?" "Yes, all 12 crew members show normal life signs. In fact, several of them show improved vital readings compared to when they entered." Zent's mandibles clicked together in what Crix recognized as disbelief. The quarantine zone contains 17 different radiation types that are lethal to all known life forms. The ambient temperature shifts by over 200 degrees standard within a single rotation. The gravitational anomalies alone should have torn their ship apart. Their ship is damaged, Crix admitted. The hull has stress fractures in multiple locations, but the humans have been repairing it as they travel. They are currently making their way toward the edge of the zone using what they call manual navigation. One of them is actually standing outside the ship right now, welding a patch onto the hull. Zent moved closer to the display. "Show me." Thav pulled up the visual feed. On the screen, a human figure could be seen floating outside a battered ship. The human was wearing a protective suit, but the readouts showed that the suit was barely functioning. Radiation that would kill a Crexan in seconds was penetrating the fabric. The human appeared not to notice. Sparks flew from a welding tool as the human methodically repaired the damage to the ship's exterior. "That human has been outside for over 4 hours, Crix said. "Their suit life support failed 2 hours ago. They are breathing recycled air from a backup tank that was designed to last 30 minutes. Somehow, they are still working." "How is this possible?" Zent asked. Crix hesitated before answering. "We believe it has something to do with human adaptation, High Commissioner. Their species evolved on a death world. Every generation faced extinction-level threats. Those who could not adapt died. Those who could adapt passed on their traits to their offspring. Over millions of years, this process created a species that can survive almost anything. Survival is one thing. What that human is doing out there goes beyond survival." "I agree, this is something new. We have studied humans for 30 years and we thought we understood them. But this," Crix gestured at the display, "this suggests we have only seen a fraction of what they can do." The human on the screen finished the weld and gave a thumbs-up signal to someone inside the ship. Then they pushed off from the hull and floated toward an airlock. A few moments later, the human was inside, removing the damaged suit as if nothing unusual had happened. "Get me in contact with that ship," Zent ordered. "I want to speak with their captain." Thav worked at the console but shook his head. "Communications are unreliable in the quarantine zone, too much interference, but they have been broadcasting status updates on a low frequency. I can patch through their last message." A voice filled the observation chamber, crackling with static but clear enough to understand. It was a female human voice, speaking in standard galactic common. "This is Captain Maya Chen of the cargo vessel Lucky Break, day 47 in the dead zone. Ships holding together with spit and hope. Crew is doing fine. Rodriguez fixed the oxygen scrubber again and Kim managed to grow some tomatoes in the hydroponic bay. Morale is high. We estimate another 15 cycles before we reach the edge of the zone. Chen out." Zent stared at the display for a long moment. "They grew food. In the quarantine zone, they grew food." Crix nodded slowly. "Yes, High Commissioner, it appears so. I want a full science team assembled. When that ship exits the zone, I want every piece of data we can possibly gather. This is no longer just a rescue operation. This is a research priority of the highest order." "Understood." Zent turned to leave, then stopped at the door. "Dr. Crix, in your professional opinion, what are the limits of human adaptation?" Crix thought about the question carefully before answering. "Based on everything I have observed, High Commissioner, I do not believe there are any." The door closed behind Zent, leaving Crix alone with her assistant. On the display, the Lucky Break continued its slow journey through the impossible conditions of the quarantine zone. Inside the ship, 12 humans went about their daily routines, completely unaware that they were rewriting everything the galaxy thought it knew about the limits of life. Crix sat down at her workstation and began preparing her notes. She had a feeling that this was just the beginning of something that would change the universe forever. Captain Maya Chen wiped the sweat from her forehead and looked around the bridge of the Lucky Break. The ship was old, held together by patches and prayers, but it had been her home for 5 years. She was not going to let some cosmic storm take it from her now. "Status report," she said. Her first officer, a tall man named James Rodriguez, checked the console in front of him. "Hull integrity is at 62%. We gained 4 points from the patch job. Engines are running at half power to conserve fuel. Life support is green across all sections. Navigation. Still working on it. The stars out here don't match any of our charts. I'm using dead reckoning and guesswork." Maya nodded. Dead reckoning was an old method used by sailors on Earth's ocean centuries ago. It was not precise, but it was better than flying blind. "What about food and water?" Sarah Kim, the ship's botanist and cook, answered from her station near the back of the bridge. "We have enough for 30 days if we ration carefully. I've got a new batch of greens growing in hydroponics that should be ready in a week. Water recyclers are working fine." "Good, everyone get some rest when you can. We're going to need all our strength to get through this." The crew dispersed to their various duties, leaving Maya alone on the bridge. She stared out the viewport at the swirling chaos of the quarantine zone. Clouds of radiation painted the void in colors that hurt to look at. Gravitational waves rippled through space, making the stars seem to dance. It was beautiful in a terrifying way. Maya had been a pilot for 15 years. She had seen storms on Jupiter, sailed through the rings of Saturn, and navigated the asteroid fields of the outer planets. But nothing had prepared her for this. The quarantine zone was not natural. Something had happened here a long time ago, something that had twisted space itself into a nightmare. According to the Galactic Archives, no ship had ever survived more than a few hours in the zone. Most never even got close to it. The warning beacons placed by the Galactic Council were supposed to keep everyone away. But the Lucky Breaks navigation computer had glitched at exactly the wrong moment, and by the time Maya realized what was happening, they were already inside. That had been 47 days ago. 47 days of constant repair, constant adaptation, constant survival. Her crew had worked miracles just to keep the ship flying. They had rebuilt the air recyclers using parts from the coffee maker. They had rerouted power through circuits that were never meant to carry it. They had patched holes in the hull with anything they could find. And somehow they were all still alive. A soft chime from the communication console interrupted Maya's thoughts. She walked over and checked the incoming signal. It was heavily distorted, but she could make out enough to understand. Someone was trying to contact them. "Council station, signal, evacuate." Maya adjusted the frequency, trying to clear up the message. "This is the Lucky Break. Say again, Council station. Recommend immediate, danger increasing." The signal dissolved into static. Maya tried several more frequencies, but nothing came through clearly. Whatever the council was trying to tell them, the message was lost. "Problems." Maya turned to find Dr. Thomas Wright standing in the doorway. The ship's medic was in his 60s, with gray hair and steady hands that had saved countless lives. He was also the calmest person Maya had ever met. "The council's trying to reach us," Maya said. "Can't make out what they're saying." "Probably telling us to get out of here." "Probably, not like we have much choice." Wright walked onto the bridge and sat down in the navigation chair. "How are you holding up, Captain?" Maya thought about lying, then decided against it. Wright would see through it anyway. "I'm scared, Tom, really scared. We shouldn't be alive right now. None of this makes sense." "I've been thinking about that," Wright said. "Running some tests on the crew, checking our vitals against baseline. Something interesting is happening." "Interesting good or interesting bad?" "Both, maybe. Our bodies are changing, adapting to the conditions here. Heart rates have slowed down, reducing the strain on our cardiovascular systems. Red blood cell counts are up, improving oxygen delivery. Even our cellular repair mechanisms seem to be working faster than normal." Maya stared at him. "That's not possible." "Normally, no. But we're not in normal conditions. The radiation in this zone is scrambling everything, including our DNA. Except instead of killing us, it seems to be triggering adaptive responses. Our bodies are treating this like an extreme environment and adjusting accordingly. How? Wright shrugged. Evolution didn't have time to prepare us for this specific situation, but it did give us incredibly flexible biology. Humans have survived ice ages, heat waves, plagues, and famines. Every time we adapted. I think that adaptive capacity is what's keeping us alive now. Maya leaned against the console, processing this information. So we're just naturally good at not dying. In simple terms, yes. Our species evolved on a planet that was constantly trying to kill us. Those who couldn't adapt died. Those who could adapt passed on their genes. Repeat that process for millions of years and you get humans, the most adaptable species in the known galaxy. The Council must be fascinated. I imagine they're terrified, Wright said. The aliens we've met, they evolved on stable worlds with predictable conditions. They never needed to develop the kind of biological flexibility we have. To them, what we're doing right now is impossible. Maya thought about the Velthari scientists she had met at trade stations. They were brilliant, capable of technological feats that humans could barely understand. But they were also fragile. A temperature change of just a few degrees could incapacitate them. A minor infection could be fatal. They lived in carefully controlled environments because they had to. Humans, on the other hand, had spread across the Earth long before they developed technology to help them. They had lived in deserts and tundras, jungles and mountains, anywhere that had even the slightest chance of supporting life. They had eaten almost anything, survived almost everything, and kept pushing forward no matter what the universe threw at them. The crew needs to know this, Maya said. It'll help morale. I'll prepare a presentation for the next shift change. But Maya, there's something else you should know. What? Wright hesitated. The changes I'm seeing, they're not temporary. Our bodies are permanently adapting to these conditions. When we get out of here, we won't be quite the same as when we went in. We'll be stronger, more resilient, better able to survive extreme environments. But we'll also be different from other humans. Not by much, but enough to notice. Maya absorbed this news in silence. She thought about her sister back on Earth, her nephews who she had not seen in 3 years. Would they recognize her when she got home? Would she still be human? We'll deal with that when we get out, she finally said. Right now, our only priority is survival. Agreed, Wright stood up. I should get back to the med bay. Let me know if the Council calls again. He left and Maya was alone once more. She looked out at the chaos beyond the viewport and felt something strange. It was not hope exactly, but something close to it. Confidence, maybe. The belief that they could actually make it through this. Humans had always found a way to survive. That was what they did best. And Maya Chen was determined to prove that legacy true, no matter what the universe put in their path. She sat down at the navigation console and began plotting their course. 15 days to the edge of the zone. 15 days of impossible odds. 15 days to show the galaxy what humanity was made of. The lucky break flew on, a tiny spark of life in the deadly void. And somewhere far away, scientists from 12 different galaxies watched in astonishment as everything they thought they knew about the limits of survival crumbled to dust. High Commissioner Zent called an emergency session of the Galactic Science Council. Representatives from all 12 known galaxies gathered in the Great Assembly Hall, their images projected from across the vastness of space. The hall was designed to accommodate thousands of different species, with seating arranged in concentric rings around a central platform where speakers could address the crowd. Dr. Crick stood on that platform now, her 4 eyes sweeping across the assembled delegates. She had never spoken to such an important audience. Her manipulator appendages trembled slightly as she activated the display system. Distinguished representatives of the Galactic Science Council, she began. 49 standard cycles ago, A human cargo vessel entered the quarantine zone around Sol 3. I am here to present our findings on their continued survival. The display showed the lucky break, its battered hull clearly visible against the chaos of the zone. Murmurs rippled through the assembly as the delegates took in what they were seeing. As you all know, the quarantine zone is considered absolutely lethal to all known life forms. The combination of radiation, gravitational anomalies, and temperature extremes should have destroyed the human vessel within hours of entry. Instead, the ship remains functional, and all 12 crew members are alive and healthy. A delegate from the Crexan faction raised a claw to speak. "Dr. Crix, how can we be certain this is not some form of deception? Perhaps the humans are using technology we are unfamiliar with." "We considered that possibility," Crix replied. "Our analysis shows that the human ship is using standard technology with no unusual modifications. Their survival cannot be attributed to equipment. It must be attributed to their biology." She changed the display to show detailed scans of the human crew. These readings were taken remotely using our long-range sensors. They show significant physiological changes occurring in real time. The humans are adapting to the conditions of the quarantine zone at a rate that defies all our models of biological change. A Mindari scientist spoke next, her telepathic voice echoing in the minds of all present. "What you are suggesting is impossible. Adaptation takes generations. No organism can change so quickly in response to environmental stress." "That is what we believed," Crix said. "But human biology operates on different principles than we expected. Their genetic code is highly flexible. It contains dormant sequences that can be activated by extreme stress. When faced with lethal conditions, human cells begin expressing genes that have been silent for thousands of generations." The display changed again, showing a comparison between human DNA and the genetic material of other species. As you can see, human genetic code contains far more non-coding sequences than any other species we have studied. We initially classified these as evolutionary remnants, useless leftovers from their development. We were wrong. These sequences are a library of survival traits waiting to be accessed when needed. The assembly fell silent. The implications of what Crix was saying were staggering. If humans truly possessed such adaptive capability, they would be able to survive conditions that no other species could endure. They would be able to colonize worlds that were currently considered uninhabitable. They would be able to go places that the rest of the galaxy could not follow. High Commissioner Zent stepped onto the platform beside Crix. "We must discuss the implications of this discovery. The humans have been members of the galactic community for 30 years. In that time, they have been cooperative and peaceful. But if what Dr. Crix is saying is true, they represent a potential threat to the existing order." "With respect, High Commissioner," another voice called out. It was the delegate from the Velthari Science Directorate, a senior researcher named Dr. Plon. "We should be careful about labeling the humans as a threat. They have done nothing aggressive." "Not yet," Zent said. "But consider the possibilities. A species that can adapt to any environment is a species that cannot be contained. What happens when humans decide they want a world that is already occupied? What happens when they spread to the far corners of the galaxy, changing as they go, becoming something we cannot predict or control?" "What you are describing is fear, not evidence," Dr. Plon replied. "The humans have shown remarkable restraint since joining the galactic community. They have respected boundaries, followed protocols, and contributed to our shared knowledge. We should not judge them based on what they might do." The debate continued, voices rising from every section of the assembly. Some called for immediate action against the humans. Others argued for continued observation and study. A few suggested reaching out to the humans directly and asking them about their adaptive abilities. Throughout it all, Dr. Crix stood quietly on the platform, watching the delegates argue. She thought about Captain Maya Chen and her crew, struggling to survive in the quarantine zone. They were not thinking about galactic politics or the balance of power between species. They were thinking about food and air and keeping their ship intact for one more day. That Crix realized was the essence of human nature. They did not plan to dominate the galaxy. They did not scheme to conquer new territories. They simply refused to die. They adapted and survived and kept moving forward, no matter what stood in their way. It was not a strategy or a philosophy. It was instinct, bred into them by millions of years on a death world. The Assembly eventually voted to continue monitoring the Lucky Break until it exited the quarantine zone. A team would be dispatched to intercept the ship and conduct a thorough examination of the crew. The results would be shared with all member species. As the delegates departed, Crix remained on the platform, lost in thought. She had dedicated her life to understanding alien biology. She had believed that all life followed certain rules, that there were limits to what evolution could produce. The humans were proving her wrong. And part of her was glad. The universe was bigger and stranger than she had ever imagined. There was still so much to learn. Meanwhile, on the Lucky Break, the crew had no idea that their survival was being discussed by the most powerful beings in 12 galaxies. They were too busy dealing with their latest crisis. "The water recycler is down again," Rodriguez reported from the engineering section. "Looks like the filter membrane finally gave out." Captain Chen examined the damage. The membrane was a crucial component, converting wastewater back into drinking water. Without it, they would run out of clean water within days. "Can we repair it?" "Not with anything we have on board. The membrane is a specialized polymer. We can't fabricate a replacement." Sarah Kim stepped forward. "What if we use a biological filter instead? I've been studying how plants process water. Some of our hydroponic crops have root systems that could work as a natural filtration system." "Will it be clean enough to drink?" "I think so. The plants will remove most of the impurities. We can boil the water afterward to kill any bacteria." Chen nodded. "Do it." Rodriguez helped her set it up. As the crew worked to solve their latest problem, Dr. Wright conducted his daily medical examinations. The changes he had observed earlier were continuing. The crew's bodies were becoming more efficient, better able to handle the harsh conditions of the quarantine zone. But there was something else happening too, something he was not ready to share with the others yet. When he examined the cellular samples under the microscope, he saw something extraordinary. The cells were not just adapting to radiation. They were learning from it. They were incorporating new genetic information, sequences that had no earthly origin. The quarantine zone was changing them at a fundamental level. Wright did not know what this meant. He did not know if the changes would be permanent or temporary, beneficial or harmful. All he knew was that they were no longer quite the same humans who had entered the zone 50 days ago. And there was no way to know what they would become when they finally emerged. The Lucky Break continued its journey, carrying its crew ever closer to freedom. Behind them, the chaos of the quarantine zone swirled and churned. Ahead of them, a galaxy watched and waited, uncertain and afraid of what these strange, adaptable creatures might represent. On the bridge, Captain Chen plotted their course and allowed herself a small smile. 12 more days. 12 more days and they would be out of this nightmare. Whatever came after that, they would face it together. It was what humans did best. On the 58th day, the Lucky Break emerged from the quarantine zone. The transition was sudden. One moment they were surrounded by the swirling chaos of radiation and gravitational anomalies. The next, they were floating in clear space, stars shining steadily against the darkness. Captain Chen stared out the viewport, unable to believe what she was seeing. "We made it," she whispered. Then louder, "We made it." The bridge erupted in cheers. Rodriguez grabbed Kim and lifted her off her feet, spinning her around. Dr. Wright leaned against the wall and wiped tears from his eyes. Even the usually stoic engineer, a quiet woman named Janet Park, was laughing and clapping her hands. They had survived the impossible, 58 days in conditions that should have killed them in hours. It was over. The celebration was interrupted by an alert from the communication console, an incoming transmission on the standard galactic frequency. This is the Galactic Science Council vessel Harmony to the human ship Lucky Break. Please respond. Chen composed herself and opened the channel. This is Captain Maya Chen of the Lucky Break. We read you, Harmony. Captain Chen, we have been monitoring your journey through the quarantine zone. We are transmitting docking coordinates. Please proceed to those coordinates for medical evaluation and debriefing. Understood, Lucky Break out. Chen closed the channel and looked at her crew. The celebration had faded, replaced by uncertainty. They all knew that the council had been watching them. They all knew that their survival would raise questions. Whatever happens next, Chen said, we face it as a crew. We've been through hell together. Nothing the council throws at us will be worse than what we've already survived. The crew nodded in agreement. Whatever was coming, they would handle it. The Harmony was a massive vessel, sleek and elegant in the way that alien ships always seem to be. The Lucky Break looked like a battered toy next to it. As Chen guided their ship toward the docking bay, she could see alien faces watching from observation windows. They all wore the same expression, a mixture of curiosity and fear. The docking process was smooth. When the airlock opened, a delegation was waiting for them. Dr. Crick stood at the front, her 4 eyes blinking rapidly as she studied the humans. Captain Chen, Crick said, welcome aboard the Harmony. I am Dr. Cricks, Chief Xenobiologist for the Galactic Science Council. I will be overseeing your medical evaluation. Chen extended her hand in the human gesture of greeting. Cricks hesitated for a moment, then reached out with one of her manipulator appendages and clasped Chen's hand. The human grip was warm and firm, full of a vitality that Cricks could actually feel. Thank you for the welcome, Chen said. My crew could use some rest. Of course, quarters have been prepared, but first I must ask you some questions. Cricks led the humans through the corridors of the Harmony. The other aliens they passed all stopped to stare. Chen could feel their eyes on her, measuring her, trying to understand how she could be standing there when all their science said she should be dead. The medical bay was large and well-equipped. Chen's crew was separated and examined by teams of alien doctors. Blood samples were taken. Scans were conducted. Every aspect of their biology was measured and recorded. Chen found herself in a private examination room with Dr. Cricks. The alien scientist moved around her, taking readings with instruments that Chen did not recognize. Your cellular structure has changed, Cricks said, significantly. Our doctor noticed that too. What does it mean? We are not certain. The changes appear to be adaptive responses to the conditions in the quarantine zone. Your cells have become more efficient at repairing radiation damage. Your bone density has increased to compensate for gravitational stress. Your immune system has developed new capabilities that we have never observed in any species. Chen waited for the other shoe to drop. There had to be bad news. Additionally, Cricks continued, your genetic code has incorporated new sequences. These sequences do not match any known terrestrial DNA. They appear to have been absorbed from the environment of the quarantine zone. Are you saying I have alien DNA inside me? In a manner of speaking, yes. The quarantine zone contains remnants of an ancient civilization that was destroyed millions of years ago. Some of their genetic material survived in the radiation field. Your cells have integrated this material into your own genome. Chen sat down heavily on the examination table. This was not what she had expected. Is it dangerous? We do not know. The sequences are still being analyzed. but I can tell you that they appear to be enhancing your existing adaptive capabilities. Whatever you are becoming, Captain Chen, you are becoming more resilient, more capable of survival. That doesn't sound bad. Crick set down her instruments and looked directly at Chen. For you, perhaps not, but for the rest of the galaxy it is deeply troubling. You see, Captain, the Council has always believed that there were hard limits to biological adaptation. Every species reaches a point where they can evolve no further. Humans were thought to be approaching that limit. What we have observed in your crew suggests that humans have no limit at all. You can adapt to anything. You can survive anywhere. And now you have begun incorporating alien genetic material, which means you can potentially become something entirely new. You're scared of us. I am a scientist. I do not deal in emotions, but yes, the Council is scared. They have spent millennia building a careful balance of power between species. Humans threaten to disrupt that balance. Not through aggression, but simply through your nature. You cannot help but adapt. You cannot help but survive, and the rest of us cannot compete with that. Chen thought about this for a long moment. She had never considered herself threatening. She was a cargo pilot, not a conqueror. She just wanted to fly her ship and see the stars. But she understood what Crix was saying. In a galaxy where every species had limitations, the absence of limitations was itself a kind of power. What happens now? Chen asked. That is being decided. The Council is in session. Some want to quarantine your entire species. Others want to study you further. A few have suggested more extreme measures. You mean killing us? Crix did not deny it. There are factions that believe humanity is too dangerous to be allowed to exist. They are a minority, but they are vocal. Chen stood up. Then let me address the Council. Let me speak for my species. We don't want war. We don't want to conquer anyone. We just want to live. That's all we've ever wanted. Crix studied her for a moment. I will make the request, but I cannot promise they will listen. The Council session was chaotic. Delegates shouted over each other, fear and anger dominating the discussion. The humans were confined to guest quarters, unable to participate, while their fate was debated by beings who had never even visited Earth. Dr. Crick stood before the assembly, fighting to be heard over the noise. Listen to me. The humans are not our enemies. They have done nothing wrong. We cannot punish them for surviving. They are a contamination, a Crexan delegate shouted. They have absorbed foreign genetic material. They are no longer a natural species. They are an aberration. They are adapting, Crix countered. That is what life does. That is what life has always done. We cannot condemn them for following the most basic principle of existence. High Commissioner Zent raised his claws for silence. The assembly gradually quieted. We have heard arguments on all sides, Zent said. Now we must decide. The question before us is simple. What do we do about humanity? A new voice spoke up. It was Dr. Plan, the Velthari scientist who had defended the humans earlier. I have a proposal. Instead of treating humans as a threat to be contained, we should treat them as a resource to be understood. Their adaptive capabilities could benefit all species. Imagine if we could learn to incorporate their healing abilities into our own medicine. Imagine if we could understand how they survive extreme conditions and apply that knowledge to our colonization efforts. The humans could be our greatest allies if we let them. The assembly considered this. Slowly, the mood began to shift. Fear gave way to curiosity. Hostility gave way to cautious interest. I support Dr. Plan's proposal, Crix said. Let us study the humans, work with them, learn from them. They have shown themselves to be peaceful and cooperative. They deserve our respect, not our fear. The vote was close, but in the end, the moderates prevailed. Humanity would not be quarantined or destroyed. Instead, a new research initiative would be established, a joint effort between humans and other species to understand and share the secrets of adaptation. When Chen was informed of the decision, she let out a breath she did not know she had been holding. Her crew gathered around her, relief evident on all their faces. "We're free to go," Chen told them. "And more than that, they want to work with us, they want to learn from us." "That's a big change from wanting to kill us," Rodriguez observed. "Fear and curiosity are two sides of the same coin," Dr. Wright said. "We showed them something they didn't understand. Some of them wanted to destroy it, others wanted to study it. Lucky for us, the curious ones won." Chen looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, the death world that had created them. Somewhere out there were the answers to questions they had not even thought to ask yet. "Let's go home," she said. "We have a lot to tell everyone." The lucky break detached from the Harmony and set course for Earth. Behind them, the Galactic Science Council began the long process of rethinking everything they knew about life, evolution, and the limits of survival. And in the empty corridors of an ancient space station, an alien scientist sat alone, staring at the data on her screen. Dr. Crix had spent her entire career studying the boundaries of biology. Now she understood that those boundaries were illusions. Life did not have limits, life found a way. And humans, those impossible, adaptable, stubborn creatures from a death world, had proven it beyond any doubt. The story of the quarantine zone would be told across 12 galaxies. It would be studied in schools and debated in academies. It would change how every species thought about themselves and their place in the universe. But for the crew of the Lucky Break, it was simpler than that. They had survived, they had adapted, they had come home. And that was enough. 5 years had passed since the Lucky Break emerged from the quarantine zone. In that time, everything had changed. The Human Adaptation Initiative had grown from a small research project into the largest scientific collaboration in galactic history. Scientists from all 12 known galaxies worked alongside human researchers, sharing knowledge and pushing the boundaries of what was understood about life itself. Dr. Maya Chen stood at the entrance of the new facility on Mars. The building was massive, a dome of crystal and steel that housed laboratories, living quarters, and the most advanced medical equipment in existence. Above the main entrance, words were carved in 100 different languages, the Institute for Adaptive Biology. Chen was no longer a cargo pilot. After returning to Earth, she had been recruited to lead the human side of the initiative. It had been a strange transition, from hauling freight to directing research, but she had adapted. That was what humans did. Director Chen, a young researcher, came running up, tablet in hand. "The Velthari delegation is arriving early. They want to see the new regeneration trials." Chen nodded. "Put them in conference room 3. I'll be there in 10 minutes. She watched the young woman hurry off, then turned to look out at the Martian landscape. 5 years ago, this had been empty desert. Now it was home to 10,000 humans and 3,000 aliens, all working toward a common goal. The research had already produced remarkable results. By studying human DNA, alien scientists had developed treatments that could help their own species recover from injuries that would once have been fatal. The Krexan had learned to regenerate lost limbs. The Mindari had overcome their vulnerability to radiation. Species that had thought themselves at the end of their evolutionary journey were suddenly finding new potential. But the biggest change had come from the humans themselves. The crew of the Lucky Break had not returned to normal after their ordeal. The changes that Dr. Wright had observed in the quarantine zone had proved permanent. Their cells continued to adapt, becoming more efficient with each passing year. They healed faster, resisted disease better, and showed no signs of aging. After 5 years, Maya Chen looked exactly the same as she had on the day she entered the zone. Other humans were beginning to show similar changes. It started small, a cut healing faster than expected, a cold disappearing in hours instead of days. But the pattern was clear. Humanity as a species was evolving, triggered by the genetic information that the Lucky Break crew had brought back with them. Scientists called it the cascade effect. The altered DNA from the quarantine zone was spreading through the human population, passed from person to person through normal biological processes. It was not a disease or an infection. It was evolution on fast forward, a transformation that would eventually touch every human being in existence. Some people were afraid. They saw the changes as a loss of humanity, a departure from what had made them who they were. Protest groups formed, demanding that the adaptation be stopped or reversed. But most people embraced the changes. After all, who would not want to heal faster, live longer, survive better? It was the next step in human evolution, a gift from the universe delivered through the crew of a battered cargo ship. Chen entered the conference room where the Velthari delegation was waiting. Dr. Crix was among them, her 4 eyes lighting up when she saw her old friend. "Director Chen," Crix said, "you look well." "As do you, Dr. Crix. How was your journey?" "Uneventful, which is how I prefer my space travel these days." They smiled at each other, the shared memory of the quarantine zone hanging between them. Those terrifying weeks had forged a bond that transcended species. They had been through something that no one else could truly understand. The meeting went smoothly. The Velthari were impressed by the progress of the regeneration trials. New treatments were being developed that could revolutionize medicine across the galaxy. By the time the delegation departed, plans were in place for an expanded collaboration that would involve hundreds more researchers. After they left, Chen found herself alone in her office, looking at a holographic display of the galaxy. So many stars, so many worlds, so many possibilities. Humans were spreading out into that vastness, carrying their adaptive potential with them. Colonies were being established on planets that had once been considered unsuitable for life. The quarantine zone itself was being studied, no longer feared as a death trap but valued as a source of ancient knowledge. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Dr. Wright entered, looking exactly as he had 5 years ago. None of them had aged a day. "Maya, we have the results from the latest analysis." "And?" "The cascade effect is accelerating. We estimate that within 50 years, every human in the galaxy will carry the adapted genome. Our species is transforming." Chen absorbed this information. It was not surprising, but it was still profound. Humanity was becoming something new, something that had never existed before in the history of life. "Are we still human?" she asked. Wright sat down across from her. "That's a philosophical question, not a medical one, but here's what I think. Being human was never about our DNA. It was about our spirit, our curiosity, our refusal to give up. Those things haven't changed. If anything, they're stronger than ever. The Council is still worried about us. They always will be. We're unpredictable. We break their models and defy their expectations. But we're also their best hope for the future. They know that now." Chen nodded. The relationship between humans and the other species of the galaxy had grown complicated. There was respect and cooperation, but also underlying tension. Humans were no longer just one species among many. They were becoming something unique, a wild card in the galactic order. But that was a problem for another day. Right now, Chen had work to do. She stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the Martian sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. Somewhere up there, stars were being born and dying, civilizations were rising and falling, and the universe was continuing its eternal dance of creation and destruction. And humanity was part of it all, not as observers but as participants, not as subjects of evolution but as its partners. They had been shaped by their death world, forged in the fires of survival, and now they were reaching out to shape the cosmos in return. The story of the lucky break had become legend. Children across the galaxy learned about the 12 humans who had survived the impossible and changed the course of history. The ship itself was preserved in a museum on Earth, a symbol of what determination and adaptation could achieve. But for Maya Chen, The story was simpler than that. She had been a cargo pilot who got lost in the worst storm in the universe. She had survived because she refused to die. And now she was helping to build a future that she could never have imagined. That was enough. That was more than enough. The sun slipped below the horizon, and the stars came out over Mars. Chen stood at the window and watched them, feeling the weight of 5 years and the promise of thousands more. Humanity had adapted. Humanity had survived. And humanity would continue to reach for the stars, no matter what challenges lay ahead. That was what they had always done. That was what they would always do. In a universe that was constantly trying to kill them, humans had found a way to live, not just to survive, but to thrive, to grow, to become something more. And that, Dr. Crix had written in her final report to the Galactic Science Council, was the most remarkable adaptation of all. Human adaptation shocked scientists across every known galaxy, but in the end, it was not the adaptation that mattered. It was the spirit behind it. The stubborn, brilliant, impossible spirit of a species that refused to accept any limit. The spirit that made them human. The spirit that would carry them to the stars. The lucky break had lived up to its name. Against all odds, it had brought its crew home safe. And in doing so, it had changed the destiny of not just one species, but of all the species in the galaxy. Because that was what humans did. They survived, they adapted, they inspired. And they never, ever gave up.